Welcome everyone to Behind the Brand with Angelica De Leon. Today I have the fabulous Jasmin Chavez Cruz, my dear friend that's out in Washington right now, right? Or you, yes, in Washington. Welcome, Jasmin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Angelica.
I'm so excited you're here because I know that you and we met up, I think it was about a month or two ago in New York City, and we
Mhm.
had breakfast. And our conversation just went all over the place a little bit. And we first met at the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, right? Did I say that
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Yes, in Miami.
Yes, in Miami, sunny, sunny Miami. We were just talking about that. The sun feels so good. But we met there, and I think I shared this with you during our breakfast that I thought you were so interesting because you were so interested. Like you were asking like questions, and we were obviously in a networking event, so everyone was getting to know one another. But I find that that's a really beautiful thing that people have, that they're just so interested in another human being that they genuinely want to know about another human being. And it sounds so simple, but I think it's a little rare to find that. So I'm really happy that I found that in you. And I'm happy that you're here with us today. I wanted to share your exact bio, everyone, because you see her, she's beautiful, and she will be as humble as anyone can be, but I'm not going to let you do that. So I need to pull this up so that I know exactly what to say, because this woman here is amazing. So Jasmin Chavez is a former Biden-Harris presidential appointee who served as the associate director at the White House, leading outreach and recruitment efforts for the prestigious White House internship program. She was appointed by President Joe Biden in September 2022 to serve the White House initiative on advancing educational equity, excellence, and economic opportunities for Hispanics, and the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships at the U.S. Department of Education. So I literally took it off online and bio so we know exactly who we're dealing with. Thank you so much again, Jasmin, for joining. And I wanted to start with, obviously, what I read was only like, it was a big part of your career, but it was only, it was a moment in time of your career, especially with the new administration coming in. So I wanted to give you the opportunity for you to share your journey from as early as you'd like to share to where you are now, and of course, your experience in the Biden Harris administration.
Sure. So, a lot of things happened before I ended up at the White House, of course, but, it wouldn't have happened without my parents who immigrated to this country when I was 5 from El Salvador. We were, fleeing gang violence and poverty. And so, we came to this country when I was really young. And I grew up in Falls Church, Virginia, in a predominantly immigrant, low-income community. And I think for me, like that is when, my spark was ignited to want to like give back. Was when I saw like community organizers supporting my family, community organizations like giving my family toys, because there were Christmases when my mom would wrap toys, but like, you know, toys, right? They would be boxes that she would wrap because we couldn't afford toys at the time. Like we had literally immigrated with like the clothes on our backs and like no money. And so we were starting, you know, at
Zero.
at ground zero. So for me, being able to see that at a young age really inspired me to want to give back to a community that has given me so much. And so I began doing a lot of community organizing food banks, organizing clothing drives. And I think my signature stuff is doing like the toy drives in the community. Because it brought so much joy to my life when I was a young child to be able to get a toy, even if it was one or two. Like I was just happy to get one because like for most Christmases of my life, I didn't get one. Um, and so I love being able to do that for the community. And so from there, from like doing direct service type of work, it went on to being, lobbying work. I had a lot of organizations reach out to me and ask me to be a student speaker at like, at the General Assembly and Richmond. Like I would go and speak. I was like 14 when I started out. And then,
Cool.
from there, like continued on like doing that kind of work, getting even more involved in the political sphere and did a few programs that really elevated my voice even more and got me more involved in DC. So I was actually thinking about this today because I was like, wow, what was my journey like? And so like at 14, I began lobbying. At 15, I got into the Hispanic College Institute, a program, hosted by Virginia Tech. And then at 16, I got into the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, Ready to Lead Next Gen program. And that experience in and of itself really elevated my profile because I was asked to be the youngest student speaker for their gala that year. And so like behind me, you'll see like that was like my first ever at 16 speaking gig, talking to like 5,000 people in DC, members of Congress, senators, and President Obama about my journey, my experience and how that has really shaped me. And I was so young, and I think about that experience a lot because it has really like been like the starting point for like my career, and just in advocacy work, right? Like doing this advocacy work, speaking, right? Like I speak a lot now to like different groups of students. I do a lot of keynotes, but like I was trembling when I was doing that keynote as a 16-year-old and then continued on doing programs. At 17, I did the Smithsonian Latino Center Young Ambassadors Program, another amazing program that only selected around like 30 of us from across the country to come to DC and provide us like with like the different networks and opportunities to really succeed in the careers that we wanted to go into. And so, that was all high school for me. Like it was like advocacy work and getting into these programs and like really really finding my voice. I was really trying to figure out like what do I do next, and like I think those experiences gave me a glimpse of what I was meant to do later on. And so I went off to college. I went off to McDaniel College in Westminster, Maryland, doing political science and Spanish. I picked a small school because I really wanted to be like a big fish in a small pond. And I really did feel that way being at McDaniel because it was such a small school and there were like 20 Latinos on campus.
Wow.
Um, but I got to campus and I was like, where are the advocacy programs? Like, where are the advocacy clubs? And so, like, for me, being someone who like was very involved with LULAC in high school, LULAC is the League of United Latin American Citizens, and they're the first Latino civil rights organization in this country. And so being involved with them so young, I was like, I need to, like,
Where are you?
I had an itch for like advocacy work, and I didn't see it on campus. Like, all I saw with the Latino group were like parties and like eating and like dancing. And I was like, this is great, but also, like, where's the advocacy part? Like, there's a lot of discrimination in that area. Like, people look down on the Latino community. I'm like, no, we need to talk about like what's going on. And so I actually chartered a collegiate LULAC council to my campus to continue on with that advocacy work. And like that is where I began like training other young people to like go to Capitol Hill, lobby, advocate, and just continue doing that throughout college and continued on with like my civic engagement efforts. Like 2016, we registered like a record number of like young people on campus, and we just continued on with that work. And so, when I graduated, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do now? There's so much that I can do. But I always had this dream to want to be an immigration attorney. So I went off to work at an immigration law firm. And I actually had the opportunity to go to the border with the team and like really got to work with refugees on the ground. But, that experience, I think every experience really teaches you something. And I think for me personally, like that experience taught me that I don't want to be an immigration attorney. And I think that's okay. Like, I feel like so many young Latinos are like, I want to be an immigration attorney. I want to like fight in the law. And yes, go do it, but like first try it out. Like I would recommend trying it out first because when I tried it out, I was like, oh my God, I cannot imagine doing this like day in and day out. Like this work is triggering because like I come from this community, like
Mhm.
I went through similar circumstances. Like I can't do this for the rest of my life. Like I want to be able to come to work and like be happy and like, not constantly like feel because I'm a very empathetic person and I could feel the pain of my clients. I could feel like what people had gone through. And I think for me, I was like, oh, this is a lot. Like I think I need to like figure out my trauma before I can like figure out other people's traumas. But I was like, okay, like I can still do similar type of work. I just don't have to be an attorney.
Mhm.
And so from there, went on to AARP to do a little bit of outreach work with our Latino seniors and began to realize, it's a whole there's a whole tech issue that comes with like advocating for, older citizens. Like when we were meeting with them at the height of the pandemic, we couldn't connect them to like Zoom or like phone calls or like, big conference calls. Like they're disproportionately like impacted by this issue. And so we needed to provide them with laptops, with like accessible broadband. And so for me, it like opened up my eyes. I was like, oh my God, like this is not something that I had thought of until like I saw my mom struggling to hop on Zoom like because she wanted to be on her like daily like church calls. And I literally taught her how to do it. And I then used that experience to like tell my colleagues like, hey, this is what I did with my mom. This is what we should be doing with our clients. Like, and it was so eye-opening. And so from there, ended up working at Dewey Square Group afterwards, leading our tech policy portfolio for the multicultural clients that we had, mainly because I had seen it with like, you know, the older community and then could now, bring it to like, how it was impacting, young students in the classroom, online. Like there was just the way it was impacting our community was just crazy, at the height of the pandemic. Like so many young people just didn't have fast, reliable internet. And, that's such a big, big need. And was there for a bit before I got picked up by the administration. I had done a little bit of work during the campaign. I was leading the Latino youth vote in Virginia, and someone I had worked with who is an amazing mentor and friend, called me, and I was still getting acquainted with my work at Dewey, but she was like, I need you to come, like consider working on my team. Like, I think you would be great. Like, you have this profile already where you like elevate young people. I think this would like elevate your profile even more. And I was like, you know what? Like, why not? Like,
Why
there's a
not?
reason. There's a reason why she feels like I can do this role, and I went for it. And it's been so life-changing to have said yes in that moment. Um, because so much has happened. Like amazing things, right? Like, I got to serve these two offices, the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, which did a lot of work at the height of October 7th in combating anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in higher education, and then with the White House Hispanic Initiative in like making sure our Latino community, knew about the grant opportunities that the department had, making sure Latino students felt supported and heard and valued. Um, and then, like after being there for 2 years, never would have thought that like I would end up at the White House. The same way, it happened the same way. I got a phone call from a friend who I had
From the
worked closely
president.
with.
You
Oh.
got a phone call from the president of the United States. You're so
No, no, that would have been really cool though. But no, a friend of mine who I had met during my time at Ed, she was at the White House, and I was doing like a leadership program at the White House that I had been selected for. And she called me and she was like, "Hey, like there's this role open. Like, I think you would be great. Like, you already empower so many young people. Like, you should do it." And I went for it, right? Like, it was only 6 months, but in those 6 months, I learned so much and really grew as a person and like built a network of like really wonderful leaders who really are dedicated to like making the world a better place. And got to worked with 230 young people from across the country, got to select a very diverse group of just amazing and really hardworking young people, and, got to really, connect with a lot of different stakeholders, because in my outreach role, like I was connecting with organizations and like giving them presentations about, this is what you need to do to, have a successful application for the internship program. And so connected with a lot of organizations in that role too. But overall, just such a transformative experience. And I'm so thankful for it. I'm sad it was only for 6 months, but better 6 months than nothing.
And nothing,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and now I'm just job searching. I was debating grad school, but now that I'm married, I'm gonna put that on pause.
Newly married, by the way,
Yes,
everyone.
newly
Congratulations.
married, like a month and a half.
Woo!
Because I got married on February 14th, so it's been like a month and some change. But I am really being called right now to like the philanthropy space or the corporate space to do like partnerships type of work, because like that's what I was doing. Like a bulk of the work that I was doing at Ed and at the White House was like partnerships, connecting with stakeholders, connecting with organizations. And so I want to be able to continue that work and like, give back in that way, and also be able to support myself and my family as well.
Absolutely. And I predict that you won't be on, the search for too long because someone's gonna come and snatch you up any moment now. But where do I go from all of that? That was so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Jasmine. I think you have such an expansive career that, by the way, I didn't know you started advocating at 14. You said 14, right? That's amazing. And I think that a lot of sometimes or at least my impression of a lot of like community outreach work and advocacy, sometimes we feel, even philanthropy, sometimes we feel that you have to do it in a very big scale in order for it to count, and we neglect the idea that no, you could just start in your community, you can start at your school, you can start, very young, and just because you're young doesn't mean your voice, like you were saying, all those experiences taught you how to, amplify your voice and kind of find your voice and make an impact. And so I I wonder, and I'm curious to know, you now looking back at everything you've done, especially at such an early age. I think at 14, I mean, I danced a lot at 14. I was a dancer, captain of everything. So that's really where my time went. But I wasn't in that stage of like giving back the way that you are so passionate about. So I wonder, and I'm curious to know if you could tell yourself, your 14-year-old self, something, like advice or some kind of, like guidance now that you're older, obviously, and you remember all of these experiences. And you mentioned, the pictures you have behind you when you were 16 and you were giving that first speech. What's something you would tell that 14 and 16-year-old, now that you're looking back at everything you've been able to accomplish and kind of, your journey and what was really going on in your head at that time? So what would you tell yourself if you could go back?
Yeah, I would definitely tell myself that like I'm enough. I used to struggle with like self-esteem a lot growing up, and I was bullied like vigorously in like middle school. And so I would just tell myself that I'm enough, that it's gonna be okay, and that, life is gonna take me in so many different places that I just places that I've only dreamed of. And that, everything is gonna work out for the best.
I love that. And yeah, and you forget to mention you should tell yourself, and you're gonna work at the White House one day. Haha.
Yeah, never would have thought. So yes, that too.
You're gonna work at the White House one day, so keep
Yeah.
it up. Yeah, I love that because I think I mean, well, we'll disclose this. My brother just started university, and you were so kind enough to speak with him. And I told you before we started this interview video that we rave about you because we think you're so amazing. And yeah, he's in that stage of also finding his voice and kind of amplifying it and navigating his career with his passions and all those things. So I think you are a great example for younger kids. And I honestly, I did not know that you started that early on. That's amazing to me. I commend you for that because I think also to know yourself so early on, because there's a part of you that you acknowledge, like, yes, I'm passionate about giving back, and that's why you spend so much of your time giving back. I think that's a huge deal. So I want to go into kind of like a touchy topic, I would say, and I wouldn't say it's touchy because we're all living it, even if
Mm,
you know, you're not getting the worst end of it. We
mhm,
are all living in America right now. And I think it's so interesting. And we were discussing this briefly before the interview started, about how there are some people that are living in fear right now, right? For some of the things that the administration has started, enacted, have signed, things are rolling out, have been rolled out since the beginning of this administration's term. And I think it's important to talk about it, right? So that again, we don't, it could be even people we know that are in fear right now, and people are not talking, so outwardly about it for very obvious reasons. And maybe we share like tidbits, advice, some resources that I know you're very vocal about. Again, I commend you for that. I always see you reposting it on LinkedIn or even Instagram. And, those are places that you don't think people will use them. But again, we don't know who is mentally, like, who's in fear right now, right? Like it could be a friend on Instagram that is going through this and they're not telling you because they're not telling anyone. But you
mhm,
posting resources, believe it or not, could be what's making an impact and can really educate people on what to do. If I shows up at your job or if they show up at your doorstep, what are the next steps and what are you supposed to do? So I wanted just to take the next couple of minutes to kind of like get your perspective on what's been happening, since you were able to experience life inside the White House, life outside of the White House. Obviously, we're talking about two completely different administrations, but just to pick your brain a little bit about what that looks like, and then also share any resources that you might have come across and that you feel is important to share for anyone that might need it.
yeah, I mean, since day one, right? Like it's been just like the office I worked in at Ed was dismantled day one. They got rid of the Hispanic initiative. They got rid of the Native American initiative. They got rid of the Asian American and Pacific Islander initiative. And they also got rid of the Hispanic Serving Institutions initiative, which we had just created in December. So to see that day one was like heart-wrenching. Like I literally cried that day because I remember all the blood, sweat, and tears I would put into my work, and to see it just like completely wiped out was like truly, truly heartbreaking. Um, but what's even more heartbreaking is what's happening with the immigrant community, right? Like we're being targeted, and it's the whole Latino community, whether we like it or not, like we're all being targeted because we all look Latino, right? And I think that's something people try to like be like, oh, well, you know, like I'm a US citizen. Well, you're a US citizen, but like I can't tell just by looking at you, and like official, ICE officials will literally like, you know, identify you as a Latino too. They're not gonna see immediately that like you're a US citizen just by looking at you. And so I think the one important thing that I like tell my community a lot is like being informed is like the most powerful tool we have. And, I was watching the news the other day and people were talking about how successful these red cards that the one of an immigration advocacy organization like created, that actually like I've been taking everywhere like across Virginia, distributing it to like the communities that we serve. If you laminate it at Staples, you get 500 of them. They're like $20. Like if you give one to each immigrant and they put it in their wallet, it gives them like their rights. It gives them like what they should do if ICE comes to their door or if they're approached by ICE in English and in Spanish. And I think it's such a valuable resource, right? Like you were talking about resources, and that is the big thing that has been really successful, right? Like something that ICE officials didn't expect was like Latinos being informed and knowing their rights, right? So they've been getting a lot of pushback from our community. And I think the organizers are doing like we're doing something right by like providing those little red cards to everyone. Every month I go to a food bank, and I put the red cards in their egg cartons because we don't fill up egg cartons anymore because eggs are expensive. We put like 5 eggs in there now, like 6 at most if like we're lucky with the donations, but we have enough space to put in this little cute red card in there. And that way like it doesn't get shuffled with the food. Like people open up their eggs and they're like, "Oh my God, like know your rights card. This is great." But I think just being informed is really important. Sharing the resources, sharing those red cards has been just life-changing because people put them in their wallet and they have them with them no matter what. Get it laminated, it gets wet, there's no problem. But then also just making sure like you're staying up to date with like the work that the immigrant advocacy organizations near you are doing, right? Like they're constantly posting about like different like know your rights clinics, and like some of them will host big events with like a lot of attorneys, so that if you have a community member who has a specific problem, they can go to this clinic and like have all the answers that they need. And those are really helpful, right? Because I'm not an immigration attorney. Like I can't tell you like what happens if you get stopped for a speeding ticket, like, and which has happened. But like I can't tell you, I can't guide you because I am not an immigration attorney. But what is valuable is like knowing like, okay, like these are the orgs that are doing like clinics that are bringing attorneys to the table and like have time from 12 to 4 to like have the community without appointment come and get their questions answered is just so helpful. And I think like if we can all just share a little bit of that information from our local immigrant advocacy org, that would be great. But if like, we don't have the time or bandwidth to do any of those two things, like donating goes a long way too, right? They need the support, they need the money. Like these immigration cards, like we've been trying to distribute as much as we can, but like they're also trying to distribute them too. And like they cost money, right? Like everything costs money. And so any donation goes a long way. But also like mentoring as well. Like I think, I look at my local immigration advocacy org that does a lot of work with like undocumented students. I think if you can mentor someone right now who's going through you know, through like trying to go through the college application process and is an undocumented student. Like I think, I'm not an undocumented student myself, or I've never been, but I'm able to like share them like some resources, give them empowerment because honestly, that's all they need right now. They need some empowerment, they need some resources, they need to know that everything will be okay, that they can still apply to go to school. So I would also recommend like if you can go out and mentor, go and mentor. But I think those are like, the four main things: staying informed, sharing those resources, sharing those cards, mentoring someone, and donating.
And I think it's so special what you said because my next, um, just flowing off of everything you shared was going to be now that you saw, I think absolutely it would be heart-wrenching for you to have had all that time building, those initiatives at the White House, and then day one, the new administration walks in and says, no, we don't need this, which is so disheartening to even hear. Um, my next question was going to be like, for people that feel that their initiatives or their efforts are not being supported by their own government, their own White House, right? Because we're still all living in America. We're
Yeah.
all still have this one leader, whether we like it or not. This is
Mhm.
our person. And I think you answered it in terms of even when your leader isn't, supporting you in your community, there are still things that you can do. And I think the one thing you said that really stood out to me was mentoring, because and the donating I think is very important, and especially like the red cards, that is a game changer, right? Because it's in English and in Spanish, and sometimes we forget it's not just the Hispanic community. And I know we you and I talk about the Hispanic community because we're Latina, we're
Yeah.
Latinos, and that's our community. But there is the Asian community. There is
Hmm.
some certain European countries that also just the immigrant experience in general is very under a microscope. And I feel that of course our community is targeted the most. Um, and I think that having just English and that other language there that that person can actually understand, right, can really go a long way. So I think those resources are amazing. But mentoring to me was so important when you said it, because you think about putting yourself in the shoes of a younger student, right? Maybe like a straight A student that came from, outside another country, another Latin country, and maybe it's their first year in America, and now you have ICE at school, and you're just like, wait, what is happening? I'm here to study. I'm here to do good because my parents told me to do good. And I feel like a mentor can not only guide someone right now, but definitely put them at ease. And I think peace of mind is like gold now for anyone going through this experience, right? Like that's such a huge point of all of this. But yeah, thank you for sharing those things. I think that's super important to know. And I will, like, at the description from our video, I'll share a couple of other organizations and stuff like that that people can go to. And just to do exactly what you said, get a little bit more resources and all of those things together so that you are informed. And if you're not informed and you don't need it, maybe sharing it on Instagram, reposting it on LinkedIn, because
Yeah.
again, you never know who needs these things. And so I love that you do it all the time, because it could be some of your friends that are in your Instagram views, and they're not because no one is sharing it, right? It's a very, I think, also can be very like a guilt experience when you're going through, and almost like, you know you feel targeted. You don't want, it's very personal, I think, especially during the very vulnerable, is what I'm trying to say, experience. So people may not share it so openly that they're going through it, obviously. But I'll stop talking, and I want to ask you my final and last questions before we disconnect, and that is the behind the brand conclusion. And to me, I always share like what I feel from my perspective what your brand is. And I think you alluded to it in our conversation today. From you starting advocacy at 14, I did not know that. I think that's so awesome. But you starting your advocacy work at 14, and it just was a progress, right? It was a journey, and this is a career that you have built for more than 10 years now, right? If you
Yeah.
started, yeah, more than 10 years plus. And it's so impressive. You are a leader, a fellow Latina leader that is so powerful. You are so knowledgeable, and you are passionate about this topic, community advocacy, and really, I would say, standing up for people. I think you also have that a lot. And I think it's because of the experience that you went through, and it says a lot about you. So I think you are just amazing, and we rave about you at my house, so you already know that. But I'd like to give you the opportunity to share what you feel your brand is, and what is the legacy that you would like to leave behind.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I were to like describe, myself, it would be like authentic leader. I lead with authenticity, and I think that's so important. And I'm actually writing a piece right now about that because I feel like in DC, so many people like lose themselves in the search of power, right? And like for me, I grew up in this space. I grew up going to these receptions, and I know who's been nice to me from the beginning, and I know who's not been nice to me from the beginning because I started off so young. Like the people who weren't so nice to me, like, are nice to me now because like I worked at the White House, like I worked for a president. And so, I think authentic leadership is something that I really, really pride myself on because what I don't need to be anyone else but myself. Like that is the person that my sisters look up to. That is the person my community looks up to. And personally, like that's the person that I'm most proud of being. Like someone who is authentic and who is humble and who just gives back. And I think the legacy that I want to leave is like, I just want to have empowered and mentored young people, as many as I can. Um, I think about my sisters a lot, because, I was at a conference yesterday and I brought my little sister and, we had to turn to each other and ask, like, what ignited your fire? Like, who ignited your fire? And in my group of three was my little sister, and she turns to me and she's like, it was my sister. You ignited my fire. Like, I saw that you could do it and I knew that I could do it too. And I was like, oh my God, like, don't girl, you're making me cry at
You're
this conference.
crying.
Making me cry at this conference. And so, like that's what I want to be remembered for, like igniting someone's fire,
Yeah.
empowering someone, being that authentic leader who, doesn't care if she's not wearing enough makeup or doesn't care if like her hair is not like perfectly styled, doesn't care if she's not super skinny in the space or isn't wearing Louboutins at receptions. Like, all what I care about is how I've made people feel. I don't care what I look like. I will dress and do whatever I feel comfortable with. But at the end of the day, like, I want people to have left feeling happier after interacting with me.
And I think you're on your way to that because you've ignited my fire. You inspire me so much. You really do. And I think you're on your way to leaving that legacy. I think you've done it already. And oh my goodness, I would cry if my sister at a conference, what is this world? That's so beautiful. But you know that that's a testament to your character and to your point, how you make people feel. So again, I'm so happy that you joined me today, Jasmine. I'm so proud of everything you do. And truth be told, you do ignite my fire. You inspire me
Oh,
so much. And I'm just so glad we finally got to do this. And I do hope that people that were listening, were able to take away a couple of things, especially with the resources. And remember, everyone, to share things with people. You never know who may actually need it, whether that's through LinkedIn or Instagram, Facebook. I don't do much on Facebook anymore, but even Facebook, people are on there. And let's just remind each other to be kind to one another during these next couple of years, because I think we still have a really long road ahead. And at the end, we're all just human. So
yes,
let's try
100%.
to get through this as
And we will. We will. As a community, we will get through it together.
absolutely. So thank you so
Yeah.
much, Jasmine, and thank
Of
you everyone for
course.
watching Behind the Brand. Bye.
Bye.